Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Social Media for Churches, a live Q&A webinar by United Methodist Communications. I'm Craig Catlett. I'm the manager for Local Church Services. It's a new title. I'm getting used to it. And I'm co-hosting today with Stephen Adair. Stephen is the senior social media specialist for United Methodist Communications. And Stephen handles multiple platforms for the United Methodist Church, the global United Methodist Church, but he also handles social media for his local church. So Stephen's going to help us out today, and he can answer questions on a very broad scale all the way down to the targeted local church information. So we have been taking questions for the past several weeks, and we've got a few questions that we're going to answer today, and we're also going to take the live questions from everyone else that's watching the webinar. If you've missed out on sending a question and you have a question and you want to get involved in the conversation, click the red chat box bar at the bottom right of your screen or comment on our Facebook Live at facebook.com/umcom. So social media, it can be a lot of things to a lot of different people, but there's a core of applications that people are used to. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We're probably going to talk about all of those today in some shape, form, or fashion. The question that you probably have as a member of the audience today is, how do you choose the right one for you with all the applications out there? You also probably want to know, am I using it right? Well, understanding your medium is a start. Understanding the applications themselves help you understand whether or not they're right for your local congregation. So the social media management tool Sprout Social has put out some demographic information. It's a really nifty chart that you can look at and quickly get a glance at the type of people that are using each social media application. Everyone's familiar with Facebook, and just about everyone is using Facebook. If you see at the screen in front of you, you can see a demographic breakdown of the majority of Facebook's audience. You'll see that just about everyone in every age demographic is using Facebook in shape, form, or fashion. And whether you're urban, suburban, rural, everybody is using Facebook. So Facebook is always a safe bet. We'll answer some of those questions today. Some churches like to incorporate Twitter into their worship services. There's not as many people on Twitter, but Twitter has its own niche. And you can use Twitter in a different way than you would Facebook. And then there's Instagram. Instagram's actually owned by Facebook, and they have some of the same advertising capabilities, the same format. If you look at Instagram, one thing that might pop out to you on the demographic chart in front of you is the age of the people that are using Instagram. Instagram tends to be for a younger audience. It's not true all the way across the board. You can't paint in straight broad strokes, but it does tend to skew younger. We're going to jump right in. And you can look at these demographic charts through a PDF that we can provide to you all later. But we're going to jump right in and start looking at some questions. And we'll have about 45 minutes of really getting into the meat of things. So the role here today, I'm going to pitch. You're going to go ahead and take the questions and run with them. So Stephen, the first question I got for you. This question is from Charlene. What is the best social media platform to connect with potential visitors?
So we got a lot of questions in today already from all of you registering online. And if you're joining us on live, of course, I'll remind you can submit your questions or on the chat box as you're watching. One person did submit a question, and it wasn't a question, but their comment in that box was, "I don't even know where to begin."
Yeah.
So I know that there's a lot of people that feel that way when it comes to Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and all the rest of them. But I would say, Facebook is the top, and there's different ages that use the different ones, depending on, the denominational Twitter. Our main audience is 55 to 64-year-old women is our main target audience, or our audience that actually has followed the page. But for your local churches, you're really trying to reach the people that are in your community. So Facebook, I would say definitely you should have a Facebook presence. My second, and somebody else, Chris actually asked a question, if you're only going to use two platforms, which ones would you use? So Facebook, I would say, is number one, because you're definitely going to still be reaching the most people through that one. But if I had to pick a second one for a local church to pick, I would definitely go with Instagram. Of course, you need photos to be in that space, and whether that's photos in your community, around your church, events that are happening, or just beautiful nature photos that you can connect a Bible verse or a hymn lyric with that people will engage and feel inspired by. But definitely Instagram for second. And then somebody else, another question that's kind of related, Eileen said, which form of social media is effective for youth? So we're kind of hitting everybody here. And it was really funny, we hosted a couple high school interns for a little bit, and they came in and kind of followed us around and figured out, or were asking questions about social media and stuff. And my question to them as 17 or 18-year-old high school students is, what social media platforms are you using as a young person? I'm 30, so I'm outside of that high school rage. And I think there was two of them, and one of them said that they do have a Facebook, they don't use it. One of them said that they definitely only use Snapchat, and I think the other one used Instagram and Snapchat. So it was definitely not, Twitter wasn't even an answer, which was interesting to me. Yeah. And then Facebook, one had one but didn't really use it. So there's a lot to choose from, and depending on your manpower and your abilities to incorporate all of those, there's a way to incorporate all of those into your ministry setting to reach old and young alike.
So Michelle says, I hate to overload an already busy news feed. So how much is too much? I like this question. This makes sense.
So it depends on which platform you're on. So Facebook is, less is more is what we're hearing, is less is more. So, on typical news sites on Facebook, they're posting, 10, 12 times a day maybe sometimes, which, then you start to compete with yourself. So, if you're just starting out in social media and posting, or if you've been doing it for a long time, my recommendation is for a church to post at least 3 to 5 times a week on all their social media channels, just so it stays active. That doesn't really require a lot of extra content to be brought in, or to figure out so much more. There should be, from a worship service invite to an event that you're doing to just a picture that would inspire somebody. That's 3 right there that you can put throughout the week. So 3 to 5. You can do more on Twitter if you have a lot of extra content. You can't really tweet too much, I don't think. They have a 5-minute lifespan, I think, is what I've heard.
Right, there's a huge drop-off after a certain
but for Facebook, you start to compete with yourself if you're posting too much. And there's, I don't know if this is a question that we might get to, but I'll just go ahead and say it so I don't forget. And there's critical times to post. That's important too, because you don't want to hit somebody 2 o'clock during the workday. That's just not a prime time when people are looking. So for the denominational accounts, I post at 7 a.m., 7 p.m. That tends to kind of hit that audience. For my local church, we're in Central Standard Time, or Central Time, and I post between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. That kind of hits our audience. And also again at 7 p.m., of course, again, Central Time, and that might affect, depending on where you're located, what time you need to post. But you can play around with it and see what your audience, when they're awake, when they're actually on Facebook, because that's just different for everybody.
Yeah, and we're church people, and church people have rhythms too. So I've always told people, 30 minutes before the service starts, what are people doing in their cars when they're driving? Somebody's driving and someone's over on the phone doing this, probably checking Facebook. Yeah. And I always thought it'd be a good way to preview what's going on in the church service that day, to send out something on Facebook as people are getting, away to church or whatever.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the first thing people do, unfortunately, is when they wake up, they check their phone and check what's going on Facebook. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity in the morning to do that.
So Denise says, we have a Facebook group and a Facebook page. I get this question a lot. Yeah. Is there a way to link them so that we share on one? So whatever comes on one will show up on the other one. Can you link them? The Facebook page.
I think a lot of people get confused on a Facebook group versus a Facebook page. This question says, can we pretty much cross-post on both the same stuff? Those are definitely not the same space to be promoting the same content. So if you have a Facebook group for your church, which I know a lot of churches around around Nashville do, and I'm part of a few of those just to kind of see what goes on and how they utilize a Facebook group internally. But a Facebook group, if you have one for your church, That's an internal communication tool. So you could have multiple ones, you could have just one for everybody. That's where you would want to post, your prayer requests and your more personal things. Maybe a reminder about your administrative council meeting, your circle meetings, whatnot. That's just internal communication. So what you want to use for a Facebook page, and you can have both. Both have their own spaces for sure. But for the external audience, that's when you have a Facebook page. That's where you do not post things like your administrative council meeting time, because nobody who is looking for a new church.
It's almost like an inside joke you're walking into if you come to the Facebook page and they're already talking about all this internal stuff.
Yeah, it's off-putting. It's not invitational. If I was looking for a new church to go to and that was what was on their feed, that doesn't tell me anything about why I would want to come check you out. Or check out this new church. So very different purposes for the different spaces. Use a group for internal communication for your people, which is actually a great tool along with email communication to your internal audience, the people that are already in your building. Use a Facebook group. That's just another way to keep people informed, especially since we're so busy these days. It's just another way to keep things in their minds about events that are coming up that might just be more internal.
Gotcha. So internal versus external content.
Absolutely.
That's important to think about.
Yep.
Christian says, we use Facebook. Do we really need Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, and more? I can't keep up, parentheses, and I'm not old. This is what Christian says.
It's a lot to keep up with. And like I said before, it seems daunting, I think, to see all these, posting on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, Snapchat, all those. There's so many. So really, I think, again, less is more on even just, it's better to update a couple things and be in a couple spaces than have them all and not be active. I've always told people, with websites and social media, if your website is outdated and you haven't updated it since 2012 and your last post on your Facebook page was maybe from 2014, you might as well not have them. And I think it actually hurts you more to have them and be outdated than to not have them at all. For our local church, so I go to Glendale United Methodist Church, and I'll just go ahead and reference that. I've had my old district superintendent come up to me and say that Glendale, we have 30 to 40 on a Sunday, and people feel, outside people that haven't been in the building have been, I guess our reputation is that we appear so much larger than we actually are online through social media and our website. And that reputation has gotten around even to our last district superintendent who told me that. So you can appear to be very large just through effectively communicating the mission and everything online through social media and your website. Do you need them all? It'd be great if you had them all, if you can update them and you know how to use them effectively. We'll kind of get in, I think, to the nitty-gritty on some of these a little bit later, but just learning about each of them, and it really doesn't take a lot of time to update. You can post a Facebook page or post to your Facebook page, tweak it a little bit to Twitter. It's got to be a little shorter, but you want to stay short on Facebook too. So you don't want these long, some churches post just these really long posts and maybe like the message of the week from your pastor, and that's just too long. And there's some things that Facebook actually, it's not going to deliver that just because there's so much text. And so there's ways to get around that and to be shorter. Direct them to the link to your website that has that full message. That's just one tip there. But there's ways to easily transfer the same post from Facebook, post it on Facebook, then post it on Twitter, post it on Instagram if it's a photo post. You can do it across the board, maybe tweak the wording a little bit, use some more hashtags on Twitter than Facebook. So there's ways to be able to streamline the process to where it doesn't add a lot to your plate.
And so you were just mentioning Facebook again. Probably a good time to bring up one of the things on Facebook you have to stay on top of is the changing algorithm. And we recently had a conversation about how to adapt to the most recent algorithm change. Someone sent in a question that kind of feeds into that, about how we're adapting to that. What is the best way to open a dialogue on social media with members of the church community and the community at large? And opening that dialogue up was something that you said is important recently, but can you talk a little bit about that, about how to get that dialogue going?
Well, there's ways, and we're really trying to push that. The Facebook algorithms, we'll talk about that a little bit later, just all the intricacies of that. but really creating a space for positive conversation. I mean, Facebook has so much negativity on the news websites, on your friends and your family that you disagree with on different things. Like, there's just so much negativity and people, you know, just being hateful. So I feel like these church pages and the denominational church page for the UMC and also our local church pages should be a space of like love and compassion and sharing a gospel of love with one another, and especially for those people, well, for one, the ones that are already in the pews on Sunday morning, but also especially for those who are might question the church or have had a bad experience in the church in the past, or just seeking something higher and better than themselves, whether they know that's God or they're not sure yet. There's so many people out there, and when you're posting on your Facebook page, yeah, you're wanting your internal people to see it and engage with it, but also asking questions like, what's a great memory? I guess this would be a more internal question that you could ask with a picture. You know, definitely put a picture. That's another tip. Always put a post with a photo that corresponds with it. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But ask questions like that are important that evoke memories, that evoke emotion. Like, that's what people engage with on social media. But open in those questions to where it would encourage somebody from outside your community that might not even be part of a church that they might want to engage. So just think about those questions that might be that somebody would want to comment on, because that's how your posts are going to be seen. So the more people engage with all of your posts by commenting, liking, sharing, that's how your posts are going to be popping up in news feeds by not spending money. So Facebook, we'll get to that too about boosting your post and stuff. But if you want to organically reach people on Facebook by not paying any money, which it's actually very cheap to do, but you have to have engaging posts that aren't just, here's what's happening this week.
Right.
So,
how do we integrate web, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all with the same branding? Asks Dale.
Okay, let me hit this one. So across the board, I think, and I'll just refer to my local church on this. So if you want to go, if you're at home watching this, if you want to go to glendaleumc.org, GLENDALE-UMC.org, and also on Facebook, you can find us at Glendale UMC on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It is the same words, I guess, or same username for our URL, our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Right. And generally, I'll put, if I update the banner on our website with a graphic, it'll be our cover photo on our Facebook and our cover photo, or at least I'll share it. It might not be all the time. I think it's not right now on our Facebook. But if you look at Glendale's social media presence right now in the website, it all has the same at Glendale UMC. So I think you need to be across the board, because I've seen some churches where it's so-and-so-umc.org, and then on Facebook it's whatever their church name and their city, that's their username. Like, you have to just be across the board, and the faster you do that, because people are grabbing the usernames up each day, the faster you do it, the more chance you have to be able to have the same name for everything. And I think that's important. And of course, logos and branding and stuff, I think we were talking about it yesterday. It's important to show a balance of maybe not so much your building as a mix of people too in your photos. So for Glendale, we have, for the profile photo, I have a picture of the building that's actually, I think it was in spring. It's just the colors are beautiful, and then I put Glendale UMC on the photo below it, so it's modern looking. But for our cover photo, I have a photo from Easter worship, and it has kids, adults. It has a good age range on it, so it's showing the personal side of your church, and I have the building as the photo profile photo. So I think that there's a way that you can mix those, so people can get a real feel of not only your building and what it looks like, but also the community that they might be walking into.
So sometimes people will hear about social media management tools. Like I just mentioned Sprout Social earlier. We had a chart from Sprout Social up. Catherine says, does anyone use an app like Hootsuite to post, or is there something that would make it easier to post to multiple social media venues easier or more effective? Or more time effective, sorry.
Absolutely. So I use Hootsuite for the denominational accounts, because I'm posting to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, LinkedIn, on a daily basis, multiple times a day for the United Methodist Church and for United Methodist Communications and some others. And also for my local church, throw that one in there as well. It is an easy way. For Facebook, you're going to want to definitely schedule those posts through Facebook, because you can tag other pages. Let's say your young adult group is watching a movie and having a movie night. You can tag that movie on Facebook. You can't tag Facebook pages, other Facebook pages, through Hootsuite. However, you can use Hootsuite. I use it all the time for Twitter. You can post the same thing on Twitter, LinkedIn, and now actually the new capability, I think a week or two ago, that was added is now you can actually use Hootsuite to post to Instagram. You can schedule a post and post it to Instagram, because in the past, Instagram was the tough one that didn't allow you to schedule in advance and post without it being manual. So that kind of helps you skip a step of having to think to post, and you can schedule it out in advance. So that helps a lot. So Hootsuite's definitely a way to go, and that's free. I think if you have a certain amount of accounts or channels, you have to pay for it, but for the typical local church, you should probably be able to use the free account.
If you're watching and you have a teenager, you will probably understand this question. My teenage son and his friends are all about using Snapchat. Please give an overview of Snapchat and how it can be used as social media for churches. Thank you, Nancy.
So this is a tough one, because I think some churches are using Snapchat. I've been trying to figure out how to use it for the denomination, and we're still working that one out. But I think the local church has a real opportunity to use Snapchat. If you already have some younger people in your congregation, they surely know how to use it, because it's probably on their phones, probably on all their phones. But I think there's some ideas, like you could give it after some guidelines, of course, of what to be posting on here, like a takeover. Like you could have your young people, they could take it over for a Sunday, and they could go around and snap photos with other members, or with the pastor, or there's just opportunities there. And it doesn't have to be a young person that does that. Anybody can really do that, to show the life of your church on a given Sunday, and that would connect with a younger audience. The way that taking it over might help, it's hard to find people on Snapchat, like to add people to follow you on Snapchat. A little bit harder than on Facebook and such to follow a page or whatnot. So if you get these young people to take it over, well, their contacts are built in their phone, and if they log into your account on their phone, on the church's account on their phone, they can add all their contacts. So you might be actually building an audience through each of them as well, which will help your overall reach through Snapchat in general moving forward. So that might be a good kill two birds with one stone kind of thing, to where you're actively using Snapchat, but also building your audience through each of those young people or whomever's phone. I just say young people because that's pretty much the demographic that has Snapchat.
It is. It really is. So since we're talking about something other than Facebook, we're talking about Snapchat, it segues into this next question really well. Roger asks, what other social media platforms do you recommend other than Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where a city church with a largely suburban membership and need to reach the people in the church neighborhood? He says, I'm thinking the Nextdoor app.
Okay, so there's if you already have a website, and I would only really offer this as a suggestion for church websites that really promote a lot of content. So if your pastor's writing a weekly letter, or there's new web pages on your website being developed each week, totally get into Google+, because Google+, and it's good to just update your profile, your church's profile on Google+ anyway, because people are searching for churches, and those pop up in Google consistently if they type in United Methodist Church near me, or United Methodist Church in whatever city you're in. So to update that anyway, but to use a Google+ page to actually post those pages, because that helps your search engine. Those pages actually pop up when somebody types in your church, or if they type in a topic that's related. And those Google+ entries, the post, actually pop up into there, and most times they show up on the first page depending on what the content is. So it's actually, Google definitely prefers their own content. Yeah. So Google's gonna push Google+ pages in their search results. So if you do have a website that does produce content that's not static pretty much all the time, where I think most churches probably don't have that ongoing content creation. But if you do, I would totally look into Google+. As far as Nextdoor, we use it for our local church. I have an account, and you're not actually really supposed to do that. So they could delete you off of there. But I'm taking advantage of it as I can because it's really just for people and your personal accounts. But I have one for our church on there, and we haven't gotten kicked off of it yet. So might as well take advantage of the opportunity. But you also, when you do that, if you do, I wouldn't overuse it. So I'm very selective on how often I post as my church on Nextdoor. But people have engaged with it and have actually, for even Ash Wednesday not long ago, we had some people from the neighborhood come in, and I'm pretty sure it was from that.
Oh, nice.
So there is that ability to reach. But there is another church that's close to us, that's another denomination, and they kind of overpost. So I wouldn't do that because that's just going to turn people off.
Yeah, they don't want to be spammed.
They don't want to be spammed. So if you're going to use it conservatively.
Got it. You said something about you were able to bring in someone that was obviously not attending your church before, but using Nextdoor. Everyone wants to bring millennials into church. When I used to be a trainer and go around, everyone's like, how do we get the young people at the church? We always want the young people. So Phyllis is asking, it's perfectly relevant, what is the number one thing that millennials look for in a church?
So what was interesting is that we just had the Barna group here at United Methodist Communications yesterday talking about the seeker audience and those who are seeking something, whether that be the church or not the church or whatnot. And part of that was about millennials and that age demographic. And the top two things from the Barna group's research that they provided yesterday for us is that those seeking a church or seeking something to be part of are looking for, the top two are looking for acceptance and community. So those were the top two that they found in their research. I would personally, as a millennial, add authenticity and relevance. And all of those things can be shown in your posts on social media. All four of those aspects can be shown, whether that's using your sign outside. If you go back to Glendale UMC's Facebook page right now, you can scroll back a little bit. I use that sign outside. If you have a sign that has a letterboard, don't just invite people to worship. Don't say worship with us Sundays at 10 o'clock. Use that sign and make a difference. Like, people need to hear the message of love, whether that be through scripture, through song, through hymns, through quotes of notable people in history. I use that sign to make a difference, and I see so many churches that don't use that effectively. It's a billboard. It's your own personal billboard, and then take a photo of it and then put it on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter.
I have an example of you doing that very thing. Yeah. So when I've talked about social media for people, I say, sometimes it's important just to do something fun, just have a good time. And you used a Star Wars quote.
I did.
One time, and took a picture of that and then put that on social media. Yeah. That did pretty well?
Yeah, it did great. And actually, so a lot of our posts on our local church page, although we're a small church of 30 to 40, we have over 1,000. We just beat the 1,000 follower mark on our Facebook page. That's not from buying followers. That's just from posting relevant content and boosting it, which we'll get to in a little bit, boosting it for not a lot of money, and it reaches so many more people. And then that's how people like your page. But yeah, we did the "May the 4th be with you" quote. Yeah. Which I got that idea from another church, and I was like, look, we can do it too. Yeah. We did also when Pokemon Go.
Yeah.
Glendale was a Pokestop. We'll put that on there. Trainers welcome. Pokestop here. I mean, just be relevant in those times and have a little fun with the sign. Don't be irreverent.
Irreverent.
Yeah, don't be irreverent. But there's ways to connect to your community in fun, different ways that'll actually get somebody, when they pass your sign, to be like, wow, okay.
Social media
and then post it on social media.
Social media in general encourages creativity. So
absolutely.
Go out there and do that.
Yep.
So if anyone's been watching their Facebook feed this past year, they'll see that it has been almost taken over by video. And Kim's asking, how can our church use more videos on social media?
Yeah, so video is an awesome way to reach so many more people than just a regular link post to your website, or sometimes even a photo post, although I think both are super important. And it depends on what kind of video you do. We're experimenting with that here at United Methodist Communications. Like, what is the right length of video? Just a bunch of different aspects that affect, for some reason, Facebook decides what it likes and what it doesn't like, and what it wants to show people and what it doesn't want to show people. There's so many opportunities in the life of a church to post videos of your sermon, the weekly sermons, events, somebody just taking a phone and going live. Right. Live video on Facebook is the cream of the crop, because that is, Facebook delivers the live video. It also, Facebook notifies your followers on your page that your page has gone live. So if you haven't gone live yet, it's really easy to do. All you need is a smartphone, either good cell phone service or good Wi-Fi signal. And that's kind of a trouble for our churches. For my local church, we just got better Wi-Fi. So now we have just started in the last 2 weeks of going live during the service. 2 weeks ago, we did live we remembered all the names in Parkland, Florida, the victims that passed away. That was a live opportunity. That's just a suggestion. When those sort of events happen that is wider than just an internal worship service, like that affects, everybody is feeling those events. When you can remember or you can celebrate or whatnot, things that are going outside of your congregation, but you can post that online. Any events that you do, whether that be, you could be at the food bank, or you could be feeding the homeless in your building, whatever that is that's appropriate, as far as especially then you worry about, getting photo releases for people. So just keep that in mind too. And you can Google, if you need a photo release, you can Google that, just say photo release social media, and there's some templates there available for you if you're needing one of those. But it's very important to definitely have permission of people to have their image online for various reasons. Video is the way to go to reach so many more people, and there's so many opportunities if you just think about it. Just think when you're doing a video, what does that person outside of my church, what will this show? Will this get them to want to come in the building? Will this pique their interest in whatever way, depending on what your event or the video is going to be? So always look at it from the outside. Don't look at it as, well, I like the pastor, we're going to record all of this and this is great. Like, think outside the box and think, is the grander community going to really, is this going to inspire or motivate action outside of the church as well?
So if your social media is doing really well, Ted is asking, is a website critical if you're effectively using social media already?
On a personal note, for my local church, I would say that a website is more critical than social media in getting the message out to your community. Because I added on our visitor cards that people fill out, at the bottom, how did you hear about us? I have we do postcards, direct mail, which I think we'll get to in another question. Social media, website, drive-by. I think there's some other things on there. Google. And let me tell you, most of the time, it is by website or social media that people have walked in the door. That is why they chose to come to Glendale over whatever other church they could have gone to that Sunday. So that shows the power right there of having an effective website. And it doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It needs to be updated and informational on how they can come to your church and how they can connect to your church. It doesn't have to, a lot of churches have these just amazing, moving websites that have, so many pages of content and stuff. And not every church can have that, and that is fine. But as long as you have something that is appealing visually, that has the critical information of how they can connect with you, and like, what does your church mean? Like, what's the mission? Like, why should they care to come join you on a Sunday morning, or for whatever event outside of worship that they might be interested in? Like, it is so important to have that, but also have that posted on your social media accounts. Like, they should kind of mimic each other in my mind. If you're posting an event on your website, it needs to be on your social media, and vice versa. If it's important enough for one, it should be on the other. So. Mm-hmm.
So Facebook is always trying to figure out how to do what they do better. And in order to make that happen, they're tweaking their code all the time. They're changing the algorithm. They're trying to figure out how far up are we going to put certain things in other people's feeds. Don wants to know, how are the Facebook algorithm changes going to affect churches? And we alluded to this earlier.
Yeah, so we've talked about a little bit of this already. So Facebook came out probably about a month ago with a bunch of changes that they're going to do. We don't know if it's gonna follow through or not at this point, as far as all the directives that they've set. But they're trying to make it a place that is more about, I guess, the original purpose of Facebook, which was connecting with loved ones and friends, and really that was its main focus at the beginning when Facebook was created. There's, I think in the articles that I've read, they're going to put all pages into another separate news feed, and you have to actually click on that. I know if you're part of a group, you might have gotten a notification in the last couple of weeks that you needed to pick which groups you actually wanted notifications from, which ones were most important to you. So they are actively doing some things. The separate news feed hasn't happened for pages yet, but it could happen, anytime, or not happen at all. That's just how Facebook kind of works when there's some changes through things. But less is more again on your posts. That was one of the points that was made. But again, we're not news sites, so we're not posting 12, 13 times a day, and if you are, you shouldn't be. So really, if you're posting once or twice a day max, that shouldn't really, I don't think you should really be affected. And also, again, use engaging content that gets people to comment on your post or share or like. The comments are really the important thing. And it's not just like somebody saying amen or okay or thanks on your comments. It's asking questions or
you're encouraging that engagement.
Encouraging engagement that entices somebody to actually spell out a longer comment on your post. To really engage with a story, just things that pull at the heartstrings, really get people to engage and to comment and to
regardless of what the algorithm's doing. You're saying this stuff can help overcome that.
Very much so. That's what's going to keep your page in people's newsfeed, wherever it is your content that you're putting out there, if it's engaging or not, and if people are engaging with it or not. Also, up your live video game, like we touched on a little bit ago. Find those events that you can live stream. We'll get to it later, but I'll go ahead and say it. There's licensing issues when it comes to streaming, and that is very important. So I think everybody, and I think it's ccli.com is the streaming or the licensing for churches. And there's a basic copyright license that every church should have no matter what you're doing or not doing. There's also some add-ins. There's a rehearsal license, so if you have a praise band or whatnot and they're emailing music back and forth or whatnot, your church needs to have that. And there's also, most importantly, if you're starting to do live video during worship and whatnot, you need to have a streaming license, and that's available on that website. And ccli.com, it breaks it all down for you, what each of those licenses does. But for us, since we're now live streaming parts of worship that sometimes has music, we definitely have the streaming license and we definitely have the copyright license. So you don't want to get in trouble through that. So definitely have the proper licenses that's appropriate for your space.
So speaking of legalities, you alluded to this in passing earlier, and several people have given us this question. When taking photos or videos of events, should one also get those captured in the media, be informed and get permission before posting? Are the legalities that we should be concerned about? So paraphrasing, you're using people's images at events and you're putting them on your Facebook page. How can we stay legal? Bobby says this.
Yeah, again, it's important to have those photo release forms for everybody. That's kind of hard to do in some ways. I think if you have the back of their head, like if you're recording a worship service from behind, but people are going to turn around. So I think that's just something to announce to your congregation, to write it in the bulletin, to email, communicate that if you are live streaming your worship service, that it's happening. You could even incorporate that into your announcements at the beginning of the worship service by saying, you could actually greet your live Facebook audience. And that's a way for people to even know that you're doing it. And where that camera might be, different sanctuaries are different sizes, so that you would have to figure that out in your own context to be able to alert your people that you're doing that. But definitely having those releases, especially for kids, that's super important. Again, you can Google photo release or video release on Google, and there's so many templates that you can make your own in your own setting. So, but definitely to keep legal on that one.
Georgiana asks, what are hashtags?
Hashtags. So there are a lot of hashtags out there. There's different. I would say for different platforms, you wanna use a different amount or whatnot. I would say for Facebook, for all the United Methodist Church related posts, I'll put hashtag UMC or hashtag United Methodist just so it fits into a, if somebody does search that. I don't really see that a lot of people search for hashtags on Facebook. I don't personally, other people might more than I do. So if that is important and you hear that that's important in your context, then definitely do that. I've always kind of felt that Facebook might dock you by putting you not in the newsfeed if you just hashtag it out at the bottom with so many.
I've seen 20 hashtags before.
That just looks clutterful.
Right.
But on Twitter, you can get away with more, and that actually, people do search for hashtags more on Twitter, so you could get away with that more, but always do relevant ones. But if it's United Methodist Church, put hashtag UMC, hashtag United Methodist, and that'll actually get other people within the connection to engage with your posts or tweets. Instagram, you can play around with more hashtags there because that's just about photos and artistry, and I see people, they'll kind of skip a line and put a bunch of hashtags that are related. So there's definitely ways to use hashtags effectively. Also, on the side of Twitter, you can see what's trending, like the hashtags that are trending for the day. So I would take advantage of that. There was one week that I used the trending hashtag every day to get in that conversation, and I did something that was related to church. So, just be creative and do something like that and see if that might increase your followers or increase conversation or engagement on your posts and tweets.
So at the local church level, do people use hashtags for their particular congregation and get involved in a broader conversation about a local church in general? Does that work?
I haven't used like a hashtag Glendale UMC at all, but I do see that other churches do. And I think that's a great internal campaign, but I've also seen a church put their church hashtag on their, not to come back to the outdoor sign, but put it on the outdoor sign. And that's not really an external campaign. If you're wanting somebody to come in the door, they might go search your hashtag. I kind of doubt they're going to do that. But of course, I'm not like 18 or 14 either, so they might. I kind of doubt it though. But I think that's more of an internal thing, like when you do that. And I guess if you did a hashtag your church at the bottom of everything, that's a way if somebody is interested in your church, other than clicking on the location on Instagram, because you can see every photo that's taken at your location if it's tagged, that they could actually, and if that would help with user submitted content or your members taking photos and stuff of, that's not just the church account doing things. That it might be good to actually add that on if you have really good engagement from others other than just the church posting content.
So we're almost out of time. I've got one more question that I like here. A lot of good questions, and we can't get to all the questions today, but we have a solution for that if you'll hang with us. So churches struggle to find money for just about everything, marketing money especially. Richard is asking, is social media for outreach to non-members more efficient than mass mailings to zip code areas?
Yeah, so we got quite a few questions actually about what's the difference between spending some money on Facebook versus direct mail, poll banners, or just the various newspaper ads, all that stuff. I would say that Facebook is so much cheaper, for one, than doing any of that other stuff. For my local church, we've been doing a direct mail thing for just a monthly. I think it sends out at least like 50 postcards to new movers for the last since July. And I have postcard on that visitor card that people fill out. It has not been circled once. So direct mail for us has not worked. I'm still sticking with it to see if we might get some traction on it. But I have seen great response from marketing on Facebook. And all you have to do when you have a post, boost it for $1. Boost it for $1 and you will see the difference. And you can boost it, what my recommendation would be is to boost your post. You can choose people who like your page and their friends, or you can target based on zip code, state, city. You can drop a pin on your church and it can be a 25-mile or 10-mile radius. It's very customizable to whatever you want. But if you're trying to grow your audience, what I did, which is how we got from 0 followers to 1,000 followers at a small church on Facebook, is that I would boost the post to people who like your page and their friends, because that in itself, there's a connection. And whether that be other United Methodists that are connected on Facebook, but it worked for us. So if you're just starting out boosting your content to people on Facebook, boost it to people who like your page and their friends. Spend $1 or $2 and you'll see immense difference. Especially, your content has to be great. Right. So have that great photo of people, of that, maybe I'll just take our example on our Facebook page of that young adult group watching a movie, or of your church going to the Wesley Fellowship at a university and you get a group photo. Like, take those opportunities, put them on Facebook and boost them, because that shows that your church is living outside the building even, and that you're doing things and that your church is active and alive.
So we had quite a few questions related to building a better church website. The website kind of goes hand in hand, and if you're doing it well, you also want to tag your social media in your website. Those two you can cross-reference. But you can find more information and training on building websites at umcom.org/training, and look out for more webinars from United Methodist Communications in the future that might also cover website development and best practices. Stephen, appreciate it. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've learned over the years with us, and thanks to everyone else for joining today. You can get a hold of Stephen and I at the email addresses on the screen. If there is something that is really pressing and we didn't touch on it today, you can send us an email and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we possibly can. There's a lot of people watching today, so it may not be tomorrow, but we'll try to get back to you with what you're wanting to know about.
We might have to do another one of these.
I think so. We had
we had a lot more questions to go through.
We had a huge response. Yeah. There were a lot of people watching today, and but we're going to have this webinar up for people to be able to watch later, and also have some resources available that you can get. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.